Hey everybody, JJ Cooper, Carlos Collazo here. We're bouncing around. We had Jacob Rudner on a prospect podcast. I'm joining a podcast to talk about draft. Just mixing it all up over here at Baseball America this week, but we hope you're enjoying the podcast and the videos. And I'm on here this week because Carlos and I were both together at the Under Armour All-American game, the Under Armour Next All-American game, Camden Yards last weekend. We were there Friday for workouts and Saturday for the game. You know, I love getting a chance to see the next high school class. I don't see nearly as much as Carlos does. I get my little I get to drop in and out. There's something about
it feels like this specific event, the Baseball Factory All-American game, the Under Armour All-American game, is always the event that, outside of anything at USA Baseball and Cary, this is like the one event on the amateur side that I do consistently see you at, JJ. I think this is probably the single event I've seen you at the most since I started, at least in 2017. So it was nice to make that happen again. It was a home game for me, but yeah, fun event.
It was a home game for you, and it was a bus ride for me. Basically, it was a drivable distance for me. So, but I did want to kind of just, so what we're going to do today on this is kind of talk about some of the players who stood out, and maybe put a little bit of bow on the, just kind of the summer, because this is kind of, I would say it's kind of we still have obviously Worldwood Bat coming up, but Worldwood Bat is not summer, right? If you're playing in October, that's not summer. This is kind of the bow on the summer showcase circuit. Kids are back in school now. 18U, also the Team USA just won the gold medal as well. So I feel like we kind of ended the summer showcase circuit. But as you mentioned, this is an event that's been going on for years. But I would say at the same time, like this was kind of Camden Yards. Like it's a new venue for it, and I feel like it's kind of a step forward as they kind of build this back further up and all. What was like if you had a main takeaway from the Under Armour game? What jumped out to you?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of good hitters we saw in action. It was a very offensive forward game, 11-11 tie. We do not do extras in a lot of these showcases just because you don't want to run a bunch of the arms into the ground. You kind of have a set number of arms that you're pitching, and so that's kind of how that works in terms of like the win-loss and the competition of the game. But no, I thought it was a good event. I mean, it's a tricky time on the calendar for this event because, like you mentioned, Team USA is playing. So a lot of the players who I would imagine would otherwise be participating in this event were suited up for the Stars and Stripes and playing on the other side of the world. But it was a pretty solid field. I thought it's a 40-man roster. We had 25 players on this roster who are ranked on our top 200 board, most recent updated top 200 board for the high school class of 2026. So I felt like there was a good amount of depth we could see from the class. There are a number of players you could kind of bear down on that maybe you hadn't been focusing on throughout the summer. There are some familiar names. Blake Bowen was back at it again. He's maybe been one of the more impressive hitters that I've seen throughout this summer, and it's almost become normalized to me how well he does. So he wasn't one of the players that I specifically picked out and mentioned in this piece that's on the site now. If you want to get kind of into the weeds on a few hitters and pitchers that stood out from my perspective, there are notes and videos on 11 players there. But I thought it was just a really good way to kind of cap the summer, like you were mentioning. I mean, 40 different players. This format, this kind of event is really good for evaluation purposes. You get to see defense, you get to see some workout environment, you get to see BP in a big league park, which is always very telling. And we also had the kind of added fun of seeing high schoolers swinging with wood, maybe getting a more true example of what the raw power is looking like currently, and then spice things up a little bit with metal bats that show you a little bit more distance.
Compare and contrast, because we saw the same players. We really did. We saw they took a BP, what we call a professional BP, with wood bats, where you could really say, okay, this is what this player is like with wood. And then they broke out the little bit hotter bats. Let's just say, like, again, we know that as general metal/composite is hotter than wood, but
no doubt.
But you could tell because the balls were carrying a lot more. But as you said, the thing about it is like with an event like this, how much of what value you get is from the game versus the workouts around the game? Because like you said, Friday we got BP and we got in and out. If you check out the video at Baseball America, I would say a lot of it's from that. And then on Saturday again we got BP in and out. and then we had we also had home run derby, and then we had a game where you have live action, all that. But a lot of what you're getting is kind of from the other parts of it, the workout part, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. This is probably the case for most of the events that we go to, but I think in general, the scouting community really values the workout setting because you get a really good idea of tools and physicality and just sort of bucketing players in terms of like likely profile and role. In a showcase game like this, especially for hitters, some of the guys, especially catchers, who are kind of subbing in and playing half the game, you're getting 2 plate appearances. I mean, one of the players that we highlighted in one of his plate appearances, he got hit by a pitch. So he had like a single AB, and it was a good result in that one AB that he actually had. But if you are just not getting much to hit in one of your handful of ABs, you might not really have a chance to impact the game in any capacity, depending on where you're playing defensively. So yeah, you just seeing how players move in the field when they're doing their defensive reps in the pro style workout, you get a good understanding of like, okay, does he have the requisite tools and actions to play X position? How does his arm stack up in the outfield? I think one of the better examples of this from a player that we highlighted in the piece on the site was Genson Veras, an outfielder at TNXL Academy. That's a high school program that always has standout players, and basically every year it seems like committed to Florida State. But I felt like even before the game took place, it was very apparent that Genson Veras is a profile that has a lot of upside. He's got a tremendous frame, listed at 6'6", 225 pounds. It's a big league looking body.
I believe it.
Absolutely looks the part in the uniform. And it's not like a maxed out frame either. It looks like he could still add some more good weight, which is kind of crazy. And you see him throw in the outfield. And to me, it was a no doubt plus arm. Great carry, one of the better arms. In batting practice, it's great bat speed and raw power. And so, like, I'm looking at this guy and it's big power, big arm strength. And then I'm like, okay, if we get into the games and he just can't see the baseball, I guess I understand what we're working with. But he then put together some competitive ABs. I think there are some nitpicks you could find with Veras, and that's the case for all these players. But you really got a good idea of just the physicality and tool set and upside potential, I think, before the game started.
Okay, this is where I provided some contribution, which is as we're watching him, and I'm saying, Kilvio Veras' kid, Wilton Veras' kid, Jose Veras' kid. And it is, he is the son of big leaguer Jose Veras. It's not surprising that he has a plus arm because his dad was a big league pitcher. So, I would say with a guy like that, though, like you said, one of the key things is you very well can go through a showcase game, and never have a throw from the outfield.
Right.
But when you have the in and out, you can really bucket any player, all the players out there, and you're looking and you're comparing really apples to apples in that case, where you are literally talking about, okay, this is this player, and now I saw this other player throw, and I can compare him and say he's got better carry, he's got a longer, tape to release, all these things, how he moves, all those things kind of fit into it. I will say, like you highlighted very quickly early in the game, and you were right. We're like, do wish the umpire had a little bit more expansive zone.
It was a pro zone in the best and worst possible ways. So there was no loosening up the zone in this game, which I guess, hey, make the players make some adjustments.
Kratz, I'm going to steal a line right from the top here about MeUndies. A cut for every butt. I took a line that I feel like you would enjoy, but then you stole my thunder with show and tell. What do you have there?
Besides a huge Baduka dunk, this is my pair of MeUndies that I got. I'm not going to show you the other pair right now because I got them on, but it doesn't even feel like you have them on. Super soft, flexible, and yet holding everything together.
I love the 20 different styles, 100 different colors and prints, and the micro-modal fabric is what you're talking about. Breathable, stretchy, unbelievably cozy. And right now, as a listener of FT, you can get cozy and spooky for less with deals up to 50% off at MeUndies.com/foul and enter promo code FOUL. That's MeUndies.com/foul, promo code FOUL for up to 50% off. MeUndies, comfort that's made for fall.
But with that, it did mean I would say that didn't do some of the pitchers a whole lot of favors because it was a tight zone. I did feel like, though, that the power, the one of the things I always find fascinating at a game like this is when you are watching rising seniors in a lot of cases. The disparity between, you have some players, like you said, like Genson Veras, that is a pro body right now, right?
Mhm.
You know, when you talk about a Dominic Santarelli, that is a physical body right now. And then there are other players at this where you're like, they're significantly further away from their finishing of their maturation curve.
You know, that was one of the most interesting things you mentioned to me when we were watching the game, because kind of like we alluded to a little bit, I'm not going to a ton of games with you, and you're not always focused on the amateur side. And so just you highlighting that fact was kind of interesting to me, because it's something maybe that I take for granted, just because I'm only, not only, but a large majority of my time is spent watching high school players, college players to a lesser extent. But I do think just the projection you're looking at in terms of just physical bodies, where players are at size wise, is so much of the amateur piece. And maybe it's worth just like realizing how big and physical most of the players who are in pro ball already are, and just how much further along the lines developmentally they are, just from a pure size perspective. So that was instructive, I think, to me, just to, I guess, kind of not take that for granted. But it's definitely something that we're always focused on the amateur side.
To take an example of that, right? So we had Landon Thome was there.
Mhm.
And if you are someone, most of the listeners, viewers of this, I would imagine, remember Jim Thome, and you kind of have in your mind Jim Thome as a player, and you said, hey, his son, Landon, was playing in this game. And you say, okay, Landon was playing shortstop. I would kind of immediately kind of think of like 6'3", you know, he's like 215 pounds. Like, okay, he's going to move off of there because he's already too physical position. And I would say in Landon Thome's case, like, good, well-rounded player.
Mhm.
But like, I would say physically, there's still a good bit of development to go there. Like, he does not have anything like his father's body, at least at this moment. Now we'll see, you know, what does that mean? What he's going to look like at 25? You know, that's a different story. But where he is right now, I don't, and he's not skinny. I don't want to make it sound like that he's like, you know, 5'8", 120 pounds either. But it's something where, like, as I said, with Veras, it jumped out like that's a pro body right now. In Thome's
Yeah.
case, I'm like, I wonder what this guy's going to look like. in a
Thome,
few
just
years.
just to add some context, he's at least listed at 6 foot, 185 pounds. So not close to the build of his dad quite
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, and I was saying, I would say that if you told me though that he has, we don't know, but if you told me that he had a couple more inches that he's going to grow,
Mhm.
wouldn't shock me. You know, that would not be a stunning development for someone who's still in high school.
Mhm.
But that's where you did see, like, there was a wide array, and you do see some players though, like you highlighted Jaxon Matthews, you know, in there. And
Yep.
this is a
Jaxon
guy
Matthews, high school. All these guys are high school, but outfielder from North Carolina, goes to Haw High School in Cornelius, North Carolina, committed to Clemson.
he had a grand slam first inning of that game, part of the 6-run top of the first, you know, which kind of had a little sneak peek that it was going to be 11-11 game at that point.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you know, it is, you wrote about it, you know, in the write-up. It's kind of there's a pluses and minuses to that. There is some present physicality. At the same time, it's a swing that right now would say that enters and exits the zone pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And so if he connects, it's very well suited to drive the ball,
Yeah.
but it's also not a whole lot of adjustability to it right yet.
Yeah, he has one of the more unique setups and swings in the class. I mean, like you mentioned, he's got plenty of physicality, listed at 6'4", 215 pounds. There is a lot of bat speed here when he swings. There's a lot of strength, and he swings with plenty of intent. But to your point, it is a very steep swing. It's clearly geared to try and get the ball in the air. He is looking to impact the baseball. Every time I've seen Jaxon throughout this summer, he is not getting cheated on his swings. There's not a lot of shortening up that happens no matter what count it is. It's always a very violent swing. And I think you saw kind of the results of this tool set and this approach today. It was 1 for 4 with that grand slam. And it was an impressive home run, too. It's not like a ball that he yanked down the line. It was opposite field, left center. Pretty clear off the bat. I thought when he hit it that it was going a long ways. And then his next 3 ABs, he struck out and showed a lot of swing and miss tendencies. And I didn't write this in the piece because I felt like it was unfair, but I feel like on the podcast, maybe it's worth mentioning. But after seeing really the first 2 ABs, and because I had some context for what Jaxon had done previously and kind of knew him a little bit more than some of these other hitters, I mentioned to you, JJ, it felt a lot like Roman Anthony's appearance in the MLB All-America game. I don't remember what year that would have been, but his game, it was basically the inverse of Jackson's. It was 3 strikeouts his first 3 plate appearances, and I was like, man, this kid just really has a ton of miss in his game. 4th plate appearance, he hits an absolute moonshot home run to the pull side. Still to this day, one of the deeper home runs I can remember seeing from a high school player in a game. And I'm not comparing Jaxon Matthews to Roman Anthony because I feel like that's unfair. But there are, I think, at the same time, some similar strengths and weaknesses to the offensive profile and some similar like dynamism just in terms of the impactability he can get to when he does connect. So he's a really fascinating hitter and one of the players that stood out for good and bad reasons this week.
Pitching wise, the guy who stood out to me probably is one that I probably came into it thinking was a little bit more of a hitter, which was Ty Burnham.
Yeah.
Like he was one who we didn't see a whole lot of 1, 2, 3, sit him up, sit him down innings in that game. As he said, it was 11-11. He had one of those though. Like he stood out to me. Who was the pitchers, that really kind of jumped out to you?
Yeah, and just to touch on Burnham a little bit, like listed as outfield right-handed pitcher. He took part in BP. He showed kind of the both way ability in this game, but like you, I liked him a little bit more as a pitcher, just given the outing he showed. 6'3", 200 pounds. He was 90-92. Really impressive life on the fastball. We had the benefit of having the Hawkeye unit at the big league field. There were a number of 20 plus. 20 plus IVB, which is always a number you kind of raise your eyes at and look. And it looked like there were a number of pitchers that kind of jumped over some barrels, flashed the makings of a curveball, change up in the low 80s. And like you said, 1, 2, 3, 6th inning, pair of strikeouts looking on the curveball. I believe both were on the curveball.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah, he threw a decent amount of strikes. So, that was a good one. I think the pitcher that I had 2 that I came away really impressed with. One is Coleton Brady, a right-handed pitcher who also goes to TNXL Academy, the same school that Genson Veras does. He's committed to LSU. He did not have the most purely explosive stuff in this event, but I thought he was one of the more impressive pure pitchers. The control and the command that he showed was really impressive. He was one of just 2 pitchers that threw a pair of innings. It's always nice when you can get a pitchability guy to throw multiple innings in events like these, because to your point, the zone was quite tight. Sometimes it can get a little bit long, but he's got a great pitcher's frame, 6'5", 218 pounds, 3/4 slot, some depth to his arm action, direct stride to the plate. And I really thought he just worked well with his fastball slider combination. It was 90-94. The slider was mostly in the low 80s. There was one at 77 that I think he just didn't get on top of as consistently as his others. But the slider was one of the more consistent breaking balls, I thought, of this event. Just his ability to use it in zone, locate it, and land it for strikes. Same thing with the fastball. He just worked really quickly, and I felt confident that we were looking at a pretty safe starter profile here with Brady, and that's not always the case with high school pitchers and events like this. And then the other pitcher that I was pretty impressed with was Dylan Blomker, right-handed pitcher out of La Cueva High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Also an LSU commit, unsurprising in events like these that we're always highlighting LSU commits. That's not exactly rare for us. But I thought he had one of the better breaking balls. He was 92-95 with the fastball. It was getting the sinker tag a lot on the Hawkeye unit. He generated 3 whiffs with that pitch. But the breaking ball for me was, I felt like it was one of the best breaking balls at this event, which is always just kind of a fun tool category to try and highlight at events like these, because you see so many arms, and typically all these guys are going to be throwing breaking balls more than they are changeups. It was 79-83, 2-plane bite, pretty hard, like late life with that pitch, kind of in between a slider and a curveball. I'm not sure if he was throwing 2 distinct pitches or he just has like a slivery breaking ball now. But either way, I liked both of them. I thought both variants looked like a potential above average pitch. He got 3 whiffs with the breaking ball overall. So those are 2 of the pitchers that I was more excited with. And we've got video and then further notes and all those guys on the site if you guys want to.
And you're watching some of this video. If you're watching us on YouTube, you're watching some of this video. You don't need to see our faces all the time. Carlos's maybe, not mine. But no, the other thing you mentioned, showcase like this, you get a lot of catchers. And you get a wide variety of catchers, right? I do feel like that we got to see one of the better arms that I will see behind the plate.
Yeah.
In this year's amateur class.
Yeah, Mickey Gilligan. Every event that he's at, he's a lot of fun to watch. He's out of New Jersey, 6 foot, 185-pound left-handed hitting catcher. And like Gilligan, to me, like the arm is his big tool, but he was actually in the finals of the home run derby, which was a little bit surprising to me entering this, because I did not think that he had the most power when I saw him earlier in the summer at the area code games. So the way the home run derby finals works at the baseball factory is every hitter on the team has like a chance to qualify for the home run derby, and then the top 4 players on each team get to go to like the home run derby that happens on game day. So that was cool to see. And then I think you got a pretty good idea of Gilligan's arm strength behind the plate. It was I made a point of mentioning it to JJ. Hey, watch out for Gilligan when he's behind the plate, because he likes to throw. He's got a big arm. You're probably going to see a big tool. Wanted to see how many back pick opportunities he had.
Your over under was 3.5.
I said 3.5. I don't think he back picked more.
I think he got 3.
I think we got 2. Okay, 3.
Yeah, 2. No, you're right. Got 2, but we got 2 because on the second one there was a back pick in the game where the first baseman, again, these guys haven't worked together, failed to cover, and I think the pitcher after that was like, please don't do that anymore.
Yeah, so one of the bigger tools there was Gilligan's arm. The other catcher who I was impressed with was Sean Dunlap, though. This is a Crown Point, Indiana high school catcher committed to Tennessee. Much different build, 6'3", 205 pounds, right-handed hitter, where Gilligan is a left-handed hitter. I think the arm is a bit further behind Gilligan's, but I still thought it was a solid or above average arm from behind the plate. But he is a really interesting power projection sort of right-handed hitter and catcher. Maybe a little bit big for the position. I'm not sure, JJ, what you think of 6'3", 205-pound catchers. Are we seeing more of those at the major league level?
I actually think that one knee catching has allowed more of those guys. Like,
yeah,
I'll put it this way. I think Samuel Basayo has a chance to catch. And Samuel Basayo is not that much older than Sean Dunlap. And Basayo's like 6'4", 225, 230. So, like, I do think that
once we start getting into the 6'3", 6'4" frame range for catchers, that's always kind of the range where people kind of wonder if you're too large, but we've seen it kind of across the defensive spectrum. Players are just bigger these days, either because of defensive positioning or because athletes are just so much more dynamic these days and faster and can just do more things on the field. It feels like bigger body types can play at positions you previously would not have thought. So I would not write them off the position by any means.
I just got done recording a prospect podcast where we're talking about players that, we wish we could do the ranking over on, and looking at Cal Raleigh and like, he should have been not just a top 100, but a top 20 prospect in the game. Didn't expect him to hit 50 homers in a season, have a season like that. But Cal Raleigh is the kind of guy who you're like, I think one of the questions he always faced was,
always,
he's always been big.
Yeah.
But I would say, again, it's something where Dunlap did not stand out to me as someone who's like, he's just there's just no.
Right. And it's definitely not like the Cal Raleigh body type. It's more like he's 6'3", 205 pounds, got a lot of strength now, and also just has a lot of room. Maybe not a lot of room, but I think he could still add a lot of weight and hold it perfectly well. But it's this long leverage swing, can generate a lot of impact to the pull side. He was the hitter I mentioned who had two plate appearances, 1 hit by pitch, and then he had 1 double against an 80-mile-per-hour slider that he drove to the warning track in left field. So just the sort of torque and bat speed and raw power he's able to generate to the pull side in batting practice, seeing him kind of tap into that in game. I don't remember offhand if the slider was a really devastating pitch or if it was more of a breaking ball that just kind of hung up over the plate. But again, like seeing hitters do this in game when you're coming up and facing a new pitcher, every AB, it's a different arm, so you don't have a chance to make a lot of adjustments. It's just kind of go up there. Maybe you've seen this pitcher before in the past, maybe you haven't. These are typically tricky events for hitters, although this one was not that case. But I'm pretty intrigued with just the size, the raw power, and the defensive profile, because Dunlap does have a pretty good history of folding up nicely and receiving well behind the plate. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I thought the arm was impressive. So that's another hitter. JJ, I know you had a hitter whose batting practice you were maybe most impressed by. You mentioned him kind of in passing, but I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on Dominic Santarelli, because I believe this was my first in-depth look at him in person. This is a first baseman outfielder out of St. Joseph Catholic Academy in Wisconsin. But I'd have to say, if there was an award for best BP, I think we're giving it to Mr. Santarelli.
He really did have a good BP. I thought, it is something where I used to be like, oh, Wisconsin. And now we can't say that anymore. High school Wisconsin players, there are a number of them in the big leagues. Used to be there was none.
Hotbed.
But I would say, like, as you said, like when we talk about guys who have present physicality versus those who have projectable physicality, I would say that he definitely fits in the present physicality.
No doubt.
If there's a concern there, I would say it is like, is he a first baseman only, in the long run? And if that is, then you are talking about, okay, I would say then you have to really work at maintaining your present athleticism, right? Like it doesn't mean you can't, it doesn't mean that it's in too far overboard right now, but you're going to have to not get bigger and bigger and stiffer. I like where it is right now. I think though that it's, that's something to be watched. But I thought that it really was a good BP. And the swing kind of worked pretty well too. I thought like in the game, you didn't get to see as much of it, I would say, but
he hit some balls hard too. It wasn't like in BP, he was basically sending these like line drives, like deep line drives to both gaps and the pull side fairly easily. And then
it was a pro BP.
Right. It definitely was. And I know that like Jeff had mentioned that he had heard Santarelli has like kind of freakish athletic testing numbers as well. He also plays football and basketball. So I would have liked to see him play some other positions just to see how well he can actually get after it running wise, because I do think this is a player who maybe when you look at him, 6'1", 230 pounds, pretty filled out, pretty maxed out. I don't know how much bigger he's going to get. Yeah, I would be really curious to see like how that athleticism translates to the baseball field at a number of different defensive positions, because we saw him work out at first base. Didn't get to see him do too much in the field, but that'd be one where I wonder if he has like the sneaky athleticism to let him play a few other positions.
And I will say, like, we are talking about a lefty as well. So like, I mean, to cite, former colleague and good friend, John Manuel, like he always talks about the right outfielder, the right first baseman, where you're like, okay, if he's playing there as an amateur, it's because his athleticism is really limited because he's got all the positions are, the plethora of options.
This is your Trey Morgan scenario. Well, maybe he'd be playing somewhere else if he was a right-handed thrower.
If the game is biased against left-handed throwers, on the field, because you can only play. You can only play first base in the outfield, and you can't even play catcher, even though no one can fully explain why.
Still hoping to see a left-handed throwing catcher in the majors.
No one has fully explained why that's 100% off limits. I get it that would be unusual. I get it. You would have to be really good at it because there are some limitations there as far as throwing to third and things like that. But at the same time, your back picks to first would be really good.
Right, they absolutely would. But yeah, Santarelli 3 for 5 in the game, pair of singles. He slapped 185 mile per hour changeup on a line to the opposite field, and then he had a 93 mile per hour fastball that he turned around 108 exit velocity up the middle. So we did get a little taste of just the impact ability. But I would say Santarelli probably had some of the more impressive raw power, and just like you mentioned, just feel for the barrel in BP. It wasn't a case of like where there were a lot of mishits or he was getting under the ball. It was flush contact pretty consistently, and that stands out at the high school level.
Now, again, we're talking with all these players also. Louisville commit, like it would, to me, the thing that stood out with him is we don't know, where he'll go in the draft. We don't know if he'll go to college, but if he does, he also, again, present physicality, where you're like, okay, this is a guy who wouldn't surprise me. Pro BP, things like that, where you would say, like, you could imagine him coming in and playing pretty quickly, because you're not saying like that there's these glaring issues that would have to be resolved first.
Yeah. And I was talking to some scouts at this event, and so much of the like where guys are going to get drafted on the high school side these days just has so much to do with signability as well. Like there are obviously some no doubt prospects at the top that teams just aren't going to let to get to campus. But once you get into like that second and third tier, so much of it is just like, how much do you actually want to go play pro ball? Are you going to be signable at a range that makes sense for the teams? But yeah, that's kind of the overall thoughts
that's a good
I
way
had.
for us
I don't know
to
if
kind of
there's anything
summarize
you wanted to mention. Yeah.
So that was this was the final event of the summer showcase season for us, the Under Armour next All-American game. You can check out more about it over at baseballamerica.com. And if you enjoyed this, do check out, because again, Carlos does, between the future projection and the draft podcast, does a whole lot of talking about the draft year round here at Baseball America. We don't do this, as the lead up to July. We do this, we're looking, if you find this interesting, we have rankings for 25s, which are already drafted now, 26s, 27s. Like, you can look ahead. You can know about that over at baseballamerica.com. For Carlos, I'm JJ. So long, everybody.